welcome to 1309, the student-run restaurant here at 9050 Viscount, the Administrative Service Center of El Paso Community College. I'm Chef Guerra, I'm the coordinator of the Culinary Arts program, and I have a couple of our practicum students that are getting ready to graduate to help us out with our steak Diane that we'll be preparing today with a spaghetti squash carbonara, some grilled asparagus, and sauteed carrots. So we do have Alejandro here helping us, and Daviana. They'll be helping us out with every step of the way. This sauce usually takes us about 2 to 3 days to make, and starts off by making what we call one of our 5 mother sauces. When we talk about mother sauces, we have Espagnole, Hollandaise, Bechamel, Veloute, and tomato sauce. So we're gonna make a derivative ultimately of our Espagnole sauce, but we're gonna start with our Espagnole sauce. The very first step for Alejandro here is to saute off some vegetables till we get them translucent, and he's gonna do a step that we call pince, P-I-N-C-E, which is actually browning the tomato product. So I'll let him go ahead and get started with that. So very important here, when we say saute, you should automatically think hot pan, cold oil. So you can see that his vegetables aren't sticking on there. He's got a nice sizzle to it. That tells us that the pan was hot. He poured the oil in there cold and nothing sticking. And that's because he was following the steps and the techniques of sauteing to a T. So pince, like we said, is browning or caramelization of tomato product. We're going to put a small amount of tomato paste in this case and start cooking that off. Anytime we're making these stocks or sauces, we want to use a pan that's taller rather than wider. So in this case, we're doing a wide pan just to show you and explain to you what a pince is. And then when we get to making the actual stock, we're going to use a different pan that's going to be taller to allow the vegetables to cook slowly and do a conduction method as they're going through and picking up the flavor on the sauce. So too bad we don't have smell-o-vision, but it's getting nice and caramelized, getting some nice aromas coming out of there. Scrape the bottom end. Okay, there, let me see. Yeah, there you go. You got it. Yeah, you know what you're doing. That's what we're looking for, scraping that bottom. All the caramelized bits and pieces at the bottom of the pan are what we call fond, F-O-N-D. So all those little bits and pieces at the bottom of the pan, the fond, we want all that flavor to work itself into the sauce. So the next step is what we call deglaze, and we're gonna add some red wine and some port wine and let it cook on down to pull those flavors off the bottom of the pan. I get a lot of questions on wine. They ask me, is it true that you should only use wine you're willing to drink? I've found that personally, it doesn't really matter. I would just stay away from a sweet wine if we're trying to make a savory sauce, because then those residual sugars will appear in that sauce when it's over. Scrape it up real good. Get in there. So on this red wine, we want to cook out the alcohol so we don't have that alcohol flavor at the end with our sauce. So we're going to make sure that that boils out, and we're going to actually reduce this to a term that we refer to as au sec, or almost dry. Take our reduction of vegetables and wine, and we're going to add our brown stock to this. Brown stock means that the bones were caramelized beforehand or roasted to give it more flavor and depth. Next step actually is going to be to make our carbonara. So the secret that I didn't go into on this dish is it's actually all keto friendly. So we're going to use the spaghetti squash as our starch, which is obviously a better starch to use than like potatoes. So we're going to do that, and we're going to make it delicious, because bacon makes everything better, right? So Daviana's gonna get started on that carbonara for us. All right, so we've started off sauteing again, just like the last step that we did. We have onion, garlic. We've added bacon and mushrooms. She's going to deglaze this one. We don't want to get anything too dark on this one like we did on the last one with some white wine, and I'll help you out and pour it in there. Again, this could be the value brand of white wine. It's not going to really matter what kind of white wine you use. And this one is very important. If you want to make sure you get a nice, thick, creamy sauce, we want to go through and reduce this au sec. So go ahead and tilt the pan for them. So go ahead, you can see that we still have a little bit of liquid there. We want to go a little bit further than that. That's good. And this one, the thickener that we use is basically what we call a liaison, which is cream and egg. And in this case, we're going to use some egg yolk. So as she's stirring, I'm going to pour in the egg yolk to make sure that it cooks off and doesn't turn into scrambled eggs in our sauce. All right, you can see it's starting to thicken and develop the body. We're going to add in our squash and some Parmesan cheese. Flip it. There you go. So we're going to go ahead and pull that. We're going to season it off actually. We're going to hit it with a little bit of salt and some pepper. And then we're going to set that aside and use it later on. The next dish that we're going to make called steak Diane. And in this case, we're using a New York strip steak. It's typically done with filet or a tenderloin cut, but we're gonna use the New York strip. That's what we use in our restaurant here when the students run the lunch service. So that's what we're gonna start out with. He's got a nice hot pan ready to go. And the first step is gonna be to sear the steak, right? We wanna make sure that we get the steak well seasoned beforehand. Go ahead, man. And the beauty of this is you'll know when it's ready to be flipped, when it releases itself from the pan. So here in a little bit, we could give it a shake and it'll start to loosen itself up. And that tells you that it's ready to go. Since we did the hot pan cold oil method again, it's not gonna stick to our pan. So if you're having a lot of trouble at home where food's sticking to your pan, it's probably because you're not getting that pan hot enough. We are using oil, an 80-20 olive oil and vegetable oil blend. You can use butter to get better flavor, but obviously we want to keep our costs minimal when we're cooking in the restaurant. Go ahead and try to flip it. There it is. Nice. So we got a nice amount of caramelization there on our steak. I'd go ahead and start with the shallots, man. We're gonna start sauteing off our vegetables and building our sauce. So anytime we do a piece of meat inside of with the vegetables and everything, we refer to that as an integral sauce. So we're integrating all the flavors of the sauce and the meat all into that same sauce. Let's pull it off and hit it with the brandy. Pull it away from the fire, man. Go. There you go. Go back on the fire. All right, so now we deglazed it with that brandy. I know you're not smelling it, but we definitely smell all the sweetness of that brandy coming off. The next step is to hit it with a little bit of vermouth. Vermouth has a much lower alcohol content. It doesn't really light up on fire for us. And then we're gonna hit it with the finishing stuff. We see this prepared table side out in industry. Go ahead and hit it, man. So this is a really quick preparation that we can do table side. Everything. We're gonna give it a chance to start. Yeah, some of that. There you go. That's all you need. No, there. That's it. Okay, so we hit it with the Dijon mustard, the demi-glace sauce. Once we reduce this sauce that we did earlier, it's gonna come out like that, and it'll actually have a nice amount of gelatinous to it. We hit it with a little bit of cream, and now we're gonna let it reduce on down all together. Keep integrating those sauces. This is gonna be a perfect medium rare. We don't believe in well dones. Just kidding. But we know it's out there, so we would be able to do that further if we wanted to lower the heat, cook it longer. Give it a little flip, man. Let's see how it looks. All right, nicely done. Let's season that off with some salt and pepper. And we actually have our steak pretty much done. That's our steak Diane sauce. And for this plate up, we got a little bit of a lime vinaigrette. Salt, pepper, lime juice, oil. You know, set that on the grill, get some nice grill marks. They are previously blanched, so we're just gonna grill mark them really quickly, okay? And at the same time, while this is getting grilled off, we're gonna start off some sauteed carrots. Can you guys see it there? Should be pretty hot. We did keep that pan on the grill, so it is hot already. Nice sizzle. Season them off with salt and pepper. There you go. I think we got some nice grill marks on there, huh? All right, so we're gonna put our plate together, okay? One of the big things we teach our students here is to keep everything nice and close together. So that way, as it's getting run to the table, we don't have to worry about it getting to the table cold, okay? So you can see I got my spaghetti squash nice and tall, just as if it was a regular pasta, and instead of just a vegetable. On that, I'm gonna lean my steak there. You see that nice caramelization that Alejandro got on that steak for us? That's fantastic. I want to show that on my plate up. So I'm going to pour the sauce only about halfway up the piece of steak and let it run off. See that shininess that we have, that sheen? It looks fantastic. And we're going to toss them back in that vinaigrette, make sure we have a nice amount of flavor in the asparagus, on the asparagus. Okay. We're going to get our carrots on there. And for our crisp, we actually make our own onion crisp, but you can buy these at the grocery store. We won't tell anybody. Nice and tall.